the RAD ONE V2 versus the STRIKE MVMNT Haze Trainer versus the TYR CXT2 Trainer. Four major differences to note between these shoes is their midsole constructions and how that's going to translate to the feel on your feet while you're training. So in the RAD ONE V2, you have the swell foam midsole that runs throughout the entirety of this shoe. It is the softest of the midsoles up here in the sense of giving you a little bit more plushness and forgiveness if you're somebody that likes a little bit of a softer forefoot for your training. This model is definitely going to be an awesome option for CrossFit, cross training, and some lifting blended in. The STRIKE MVMNT Haze Trainer has the Cush 50 midsole. This is a little bit more of a medium density midsole, has a lot of flexibility, and it runs a little bit denser than the RAD ONE V2 regarding the feel on your feet. This model is great for anybody who likes a more minimalist feeling training shoe, or anybody who wants a very dense feel for lifting in the gym and for just casual wear and daily wear. In the TYR CXT2, you have the Surge Energy Foam. Now this midsole I would say is actually the most dense of these shoes. It's the toughest to compress, and this model has a much more dense feel throughout the midfoot and heel. Now up here in the forefoot, there is a little bit more flexibility and forgiveness, so it can be a good option as well for CrossFit and cross training, and for a big lifting bias, the midsole is very stable for that context. The second major difference to note between these shoes is their upper constructions and how that's going to feel on your feet. So with the RAD ONE V2, we have a reinforced mesh upper, and it has a pretty good hug throughout the forefoot into the midfoot. This model's upper I think will work for most foot anatomies unless you have an exceptionally thick forefoot, but for the most part the upper of the shoe does a really good job with overall lockdown and durability. In the STRIKE MVMNT Haze Trainer, you have this jacquard knit that runs throughout the forefoot, into the midfoot, and into the heel. Now this upper construction has a pretty low volume, and when it comes to sizing wise and fit wise, I would say the Haze Trainer is probably one of the most polarizing shoes out there. Like, you either love the Haze Trainer and its fit, or you despise it. And so that said, if you have a very high instep or thick foot, you may want to consider one of the other options up here, because the forefoot upper in this model may feel a little bit too snug for your needs. And then from a durability context, the upper can also be really variable in this shoe, because there aren't really any overlays to help protect some of the high stress areas of the shoe, and sometimes you can have this shoe break down quicker than the other two up here. In the TYR CXT2 Trainer, you have a chain link mesh that runs throughout the forefoot into the midfoot. You have some overlays back here in the heel, and then you also have an internal toe guard here for additional durability. From a lockdown standpoint, the shoe does a really good job. Between these three models up here, I do think the TYR CXT2's boot is the most rigid. The RAD ONE V2 also has a nice rigidity to it, whereas the Haze Trainer has the most pliability to it. So if you like a little bit of ankle support, that would be something to consider with the TYR CXT2 as well. The third major difference between these shoes is their heel to toe drops. So over here in the RAD ONE V2, you have a drop of 6 millimeters. In the Haze Trainer, you have a 4 millimeter drop, and then in the CXT2, you have a drop of 7 millimeters. So if you are a lankier or taller lifter and you need a little bit more heel for mobility, the TYR CXT2 and the RAD ONE V2 will likely feel best for you. And if you're somebody who likes a slightly flatter feeling shoe, or you like the older cross training shoes, the 4 millimeter drop of the Haze Trainer will feel pretty good for your needs. The four major difference to note between these shoes is their outsole constructions. So over here in the RAD ONE V2, you have a herringbone tread patterning with some grooves up here in the forefoot. This outsole I think does a really good job with grip, and you also have these overlays here on the lateral and medial side for additional durability and lockdown, and just general grip for different movements. When it comes to grippiness of these three shoes, I would say the RAD ONE V2 has the best outsole up here when it comes to giving you a lot of bite on different surfaces. In the Haze Trainer, you have this full rubber outsole with this very low tread patterning. Now with the Haze Trainer's outsole, what I've noticed is that different colorways can have different wears with the outsoles. Some fade a little bit faster than others, and some even feel a little bit grippier than others. And now maybe that's just a placebo thing and a me thing. Let me know in the comments below. But when it comes to grip, I would say that this is probably the lowest tier of grip up here when it comes to bite on different surfaces. Now the shoe should be grippy enough for most training contexts, but again, when it comes to sheer bite on different surfaces, it's definitely going to be the third option up here. In the TYR CXT2 Trainer, you have a full rubber outsole as well with grooves up here in the forefoot and then through the midfoot and heel. The component that TYR uses on this is their TYR Tack rubber, and generally this rubber does a really good job. Now I will say I had some issues with the translucent outsole in my red colorway, but this black colorway with the gum outsole has been awesome. And so if you're big on grip for your training, looking at the RAD ONE V2 or the TYR CXT2, the Haze Trainer again does have a good grip, but when it comes to just sheer outsole fade and just tread patterning giving you the most range, the CXT2 and the RAD ONE V2 will be your better bets of these three. But now let's talk about some performance differences between these models. All right, now let's discuss performance, and honestly, this section was very difficult to make. But when it comes to lifting, which of these models is going to be your best bet? To be quite honest, all these shoes will work really great. I have lifted very heavy in all of these shoes, and they've all been really exceptional. Now, when it comes to the stability and versatility spectrum, that starts over here with the CXT2, I would say is being the most stable when it comes to just sheer stability when lifting. The Haze Trainer is right in the middle, and the RAD ONE V2 is a little bit more of your plush model up here. Now, that said, I don't think you should necessarily stress the midsoles compressing at all with your training. All these models will work exceptionally well for heavy deadlifts, cleans, squats. And so what I would suggest doing is looking at how the midsole is going to interact for other forms of training and then factoring that into your lifting decision. So if your main ask is just lifting, the CXT2 can be a great option. If you like shoes for lifting that have a little bit more of a minimalist feel, a lot more flexibility throughout the sole, the Haze Trainer would be your best bet. And then with the RAD ONE V2, if you want a shoe for heavier lifting, but you also like to do a lot of cross training, that's where the RAD ONE V2 would take the edge in my opinion compared to these three. Now that said, if I had to pick an outright winner, I would pick the Haze Trainer or the RAD ONE V2, and that's because of how I factor these shoes into my other training and daily wear contexts. Now, which model is best for CrossFit? That is where I'm going to give the edge to the RAD ONE V2 or the TYR CXT trainer. Both of these shoes I think have done a good job with their overall durability long term for me, and I think if you're somebody who wants a shoe that's a little bit more plush in your gym programs, more box jumps, jump rope, short runs, the RAD ONE V2 would be your best bet. And if your box programs a lot of lifting, the TYR CXT would be your best bet. The Haze Trainer can be great for CrossFit, but the variability of this shoe's durability is why I'm not recommending it as my top pick in this category. Now, which model is best for cross training? I would give the edge to the RAD ONE V2 in this category. This shoe I think feels the best regarding the midsole, giving you a little bit more and giving you a tiny bit more responsiveness. And then also with the wave construction here on the lateral medial side and the reworked upper, you get a nice level of security with this shoe. The CXT trainer can also be a good bet. However, this model can feel a little bit bulkier at times, but if you do like that extra ankle support, as mentioned in the earlier differences section, that's where I think the CXT can make a lot of sense. And you also have some nice sidewalls here for additional security when you're doing multi-directional work for cross-training context. The Haze Trainer can also work really well, but you have this jacquard knit that's not going to give you the same lockdown as these two models, and because this midsole does have a slightly more dense feel to it, if you like more responsiveness, that would definitely be something to consider with this shoe. And now let's talk about short runs. Which model is going to be better? The RAD ONE V2 is taking the edge here, and then I would give the second pick to the Haze Trainer and then to the TYR CXT. To be quite honest, both of these shoes can kind of go back and forth depending on what you prefer. But I think if you want a slightly softer ride, especially if you're a forefoot or midfoot striker, the RAD ONE V2 is going to take the edge for runs that range from 400 to like 1,000 to 1,200 meters in length. Now, which model is best for daily wear? That is where I'm giving the edge to the Haze Trainer. I like the simplistic construction of this shoe. This is generally one of the shoes that I'll reach for when I'm traveling and I want that single shoe for dressing up, but then also going to train in. And now that said, if you do like the RAD ONE V2's wave construction, this model can also work. I think on feet, the midsole of this shoe feels really good for all day wear. I just don't necessarily love the appearance of this shoe. And the CXT would definitely be my last pick here. Its higher drop and slightly more aggressive arch and tapered forefoot is what limits its ability, I think, to just be a really great shoe for all day wear if you're somebody who likes a flatter feeling shoe or a slightly softer feel for that context. So when it comes to sizing and fit of these shoes, all these models should size true to size for most individuals, but there will be some nuances here. So with the RAD ONE V2, narrow, medium, and slightly wider feet, so E to double E width feet, should be safe going true to size in this model. The arch feels less aggressive in the shoe compared to the RAD ONE V1 if you tried that shoe, and it is a slightly wider model and longer model compared to that shoe as well. The Haze Trainer should work for medium, narrow, and slightly wider feet as well. However, with the Haze Trainer, you do have a pretty aggressive taper here to the forefoot. And as mentioned earlier, the volume of this shoe's upper can feel pretty low for certain foot anatomy. So if you have a very high instep, a thick foot, or a flat foot, you may want to steer clear of the Haze Trainer because it can feel very polarizing with its fit. And so again, narrow, medium, E to double E width feet, you should be safe going true to size in the Haze Trainer, but again, the fit can be super polarizing with this shoe, so keep that in mind. With the TYR CXT trainer, narrow and medium width feet should be safe going true to size in the normal model of this shoe. If you have an E to double E width foot or even 3E width foot, go with the wide version. This is the wide version, and it rivals kind of the Haze Trainer's width. It's actually a little bit narrower than the RAD ONE V2. And so that said, if you are that E to double E width foot, just default to the wide option of the CXT because I'm not convinced you'll have enough room in the forefoot with the normal model. And if we're talking about the widest shoe up here, that would actually be the RAD ONE ONE V2, believe it or not. It's going to give you the slightly widest forefoot, which is awesome to see because it seems like this model is starting to hedge towards being a bit wider throughout, which is awesome. All right, so now let's cover the weight, heel toe drop, stack heights, and insoles in all three of these shoes. So I have a size 10 in all of these models. This is a wide TYR CXT2, just FYI. So in the RAD ONE V2, we have a weight of 13.45 ounces. In the TYR CXT2 wide here, we have a weight of 13.45 ounces. No way. And then in the Haze Trainer here with the size 10, we have a weight of 11.05 ounces. The heel toe drops of these shoes sit at 6 millimeters for the RAD ONE V2, 4 millimeters for the Haze Trainer, and 7 millimeters for the TYR CXT2. When it comes to stack heights, the RAD ONE V2 has the highest stack height between these shoes, and then the TYR CXT2 and the Haze are very similar with their overall stack heights at the forefoot and heel. Now, once again, the CXT2 does have a higher drop, so the heel will sit a little bit higher just naturally compared to the Haze Trainer. And then looking at the insoles of these shoes, all three of these models have thin foam removable insoles, so you can take them out and put your own insoles in. But again, the upper volumes can vary a lot when it comes to that context, so definitely ask a question before you do so if you're debating between one of these shoes and that need. All right, guys, that wraps up this comparison of the TYR CXT2 trainer, the STRIKE MVMNT Haze Trainer, and the RAD ONE V2. I like all of these shoes for slightly different reasons. I think if you want that all-in-one shoe for CrossFit and cross-training, the RAD ONE V2 can be an awesome option. If you want a shoe for lifting, some cross-training, but then a lot of daily wear, the Haze Trainer can be a great bet. And then if you want that shoe for CrossFit that's really good for lifting as well, the TYR CXT2 can be an awesome option to go with. If you have additional questions on any of these shoes, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.